It was once praised as the future of public transportation, a state-of-the-art bus built by an aerospace corporation and backed by millions of dollars from the federal government. Yet after only a few months, everything began to collapse. Frames cracked, suspensions shattered, an entire city left abandoned on the streets. What really happened to the Grumman 870? Let's uncover the shocking truth behind the Grumman 870 disaster. When the Grumman 870 was unveiled, it wasn't introduced as just another bus. It was sold as a leap forward, an advanced machine that promised to drag America's transit fleets into a new era. At the heart of the pitch was its body. Unlike the heavy, steel-framed buses of the 1960s, the 870 featured a lightweight aluminum monocoque design. On paper, this meant better fuel economy, less corrosion, and a vehicle that would outlast anything that came before it. For city officials fighting constant repair bills on their aging fleets, that was an irresistible promise. The design was equally bold. A modular frame meant parts could be swapped out more easily, reducing downtime in the garage. A wider front doorway and a flat, spacious floor suggested faster boarding and more comfort for passengers. Large windows bathed the cabin in light, giving the bus a modern, open feel that stood in sharp contrast to the dark, narrow interiors commuters had grown used to. And then there was the powertrain. The Grumman 870 could be ordered with multiple engines, including the widely trusted Detroit diesel 6V71, paired with automatic transmissions that aimed to simplify operation for drivers. Flexibility, efficiency, and comfort, all wrapped in one package. To transit authorities under pressure to modernize, the 870 looked like the solution to every problem. It was pitched not just as a bus for today, but as the bus of tomorrow, durable, economical, and built to carry America's cities confidently into the future. To understand why the Grumman 870 was embraced so quickly, you have to look at the state of America's transit systems in the late 1970s. By then, many of the buses rolling through New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles had been in service for decades. Their paint was faded, their seats torn, and their frames rattled with every pothole. Mechanics were fighting a losing battle just to keep them on the road. The repair bills piled higher every year, and city officials knew they were running out of time. The oil crises of the 1970s only made matters worse. Fuel prices shot up, squeezing transit agencies that were already cash-strapped. Older buses burned fuel inefficiently, draining budgets at a time when ridership was rising and public demand for reliable service had never been greater. Something had to give. The federal government stepped in. Through the Urban Mass Transportation Administration, Washington pumped millions of dollars into local transit agencies, offering subsidies to modernize fleets. For cities, it was an opportunity too big to ignore, funding to replace the aging iron horses with a new generation of machines. But federal money came with strings attached. The new buses needed to be more fuel efficient. They needed to be durable. And for the first time, they had to meet emerging accessibility standards, giving passengers with disabilities a fair chance to ride. The pressure was enormous. Transit authorities needed answers fast. Manufacturers were expected to deliver a bus that could do it all. And into that climate of urgency stepped Grumman with a gleaming new machine called the 870. Long before Grumman's name was stamped on the side of a bus, the story began in a small town in Ohio. In 1913, the Flexible Company, spelled F-L-X-I-B-L-E, started out building motorcycle sidecars. But within a decade, they had shifted to buses, and by mid-century, Flexible was a respected name in the industry. For years, Flexible went head-to-head with General Motors, whose new-look buses dominated America's city streets. Flexible's own models earned a reputation for toughness and reliability, carrying millions of passengers across the country through the 1960s and 70s. Transit agencies trusted the brand, and when the call came for a new generation of buses, Flexible was ready to respond. Their answer was the Model 870. Unlike the steel giants of the past, the 870 featured an aluminum monocoque body, lighter, sleeker, and less prone to rust. Its styling was more modern, with wider windows and a design that fit the image of a city stepping into the future. Just as important, it was engineered to be flexible, able to accommodate different powertrains so it could serve the unique needs of transit agencies across the country. Then came Grumman. In the mid-1970s, the aerospace giant acquired Flexible, inheriting the 870 project at exactly the moment when federal subsidies were flooding the market. With their reputation in aviation and defense, Grumman had the credibility to market the bus not just as another vehicle, but as a product of cutting-edge engineering. The name alone carried weight. For city officials, it seemed like the perfect marriage. Flexible's transit legacy combined with Grumman's aerospace prestige. On paper, the 870 looked unstoppable. When Grumman officially unveiled the 870, the response from America's biggest cities was immediate and massive. New York City led the charge, signing a contract for nearly 850 buses. It was one of the largest single bus procurements in U.S. history. For the nation's busiest transit system, the 870 wasn't just a new vehicle. It was supposed to be a lifeline. Other cities quickly followed. Los Angeles placed orders. Chicago jumped in. Transit authorities across the country, enticed by federal subsidies and impressed by Grumman's aerospace reputation, lined up to claim their share of this so-called next-generation bus. On paper, the future looked bright. Orders were flooding in. Factories buzzed with production, and Grumman stood poised to dominate the transit market for decades to come. But behind the excitement lay a dangerous truth. The Grumman 870 had never been tested under the full, brutal conditions of America's busiest city streets. There were no years of real-world trials, no long-term durability studies, no grueling stress tests to prove the design could survive potholes, curbs, and the relentless pounding of urban traffic. Why? Because time was money. Federal funding was available now, and agencies had to spend it quickly or lose it. In the rush to deliver buses to paying customers, Grumman pushed the 870 into mass production before the engineering had fully matured. What looked like a breakthrough on the glossy sales brochures was, in truth, still an unproven experiment. And once hundreds of those buses hit the streets of New York, the cracks, both figurative and literal, would not take long to appear. At first, the problem seemed minor. Drivers reported strange rattles in the panels. Mechanics noticed loose doors, odd vibrations, and parts that didn't quite fit the way they should. Annoying, perhaps, but not catastrophic. Then came the cracks. Within just a few months of service, mechanics discovered fractures in one of the most critical parts of the bus, the A-frame. This structural member held the front axle in place, absorbing enormous stress every time the bus turned, braked, or hit a pothole. In a city like New York, where every block meant curbs, bumps, and constant stops, that stress was relentless. By late 1980, more than 200 Grumman 870s were found with cracked A-frames. Some were so severe that axles were on the verge of collapsing. This wasn't a case of normal wear and tear, it was a fundamental design flaw. In the quest to save weight, Grumman had used thin aluminum alloys and rushed welds, materials that simply couldn't withstand the daily punishment of city service. The suspension system, too, began to unravel. On paper, the 870's air ride design promised a smoother, more modern ride. In reality, it buckled under the harsh streets of New York. Shock absorbers snapped. Bushings tore apart. Tires wore down at alarming rates. Alignment slipped constantly, leaving buses pulling off center and drivers fighting for control. What was meant to bring comfort instead created danger. Faced with mounting failures, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority had no choice. Hundreds of Grumman 870s were pulled from service, crippling routes and leaving riders stranded. What was supposed to be the future of public transit had, in less than a year, become a citywide transportation crisis. From the outside, The Grumman 870 looked every bit the modern machine it claimed to be. Its sleek body, wide windows, and futuristic profile suggested progress, something new for a new era. But once passengers stepped inside, the illusion quickly fell apart. Within weeks, panels along the walls began to rattle loose. Each bump in the road turned the interior into a chorus of clattering metal and plastic. The ride, far from smooth, became a constant reminder that something wasn't quite right. Comfort systems were no better. Heating and ventilation broke down with alarming frequency. On sweltering summer afternoons, riders sat packed into stifling buses, air barely moving. In the dead of winter, the opposite was true. Cold drafts swept through cabins where heaters had failed, leaving commuters shivering on their way to work. The seating, meant to be durable and cost-effective, turned out brittle. Plastic shells cracked under daily use. Floors, promised to be long-lasting, wore out far faster than expected, leaving scuffed, uneven surfaces that looked tired long before their time. For passengers, the contrast was stark. The bus that had been heralded as the future of public transit delivered an experience that felt cheap, noisy, and unreliable. Instead of confidence and comfort, riders faced frustration and unease every single day. What had been marketed as a revolution in urban travel had become, in practice, a daily nightmare, proof that even the brightest promises can collapse under the weight of reality. The Grumman 870, from a golden promise to one of the greatest bus disasters in American history, it revealed the brutal gap between technology on paper and reality on the streets. And it stands as a reminder that haste, combined with ambition beyond ability, can leave behind consequences an entire city is forced to bear. What about you? Do you think the Grumman 870 was just an unfortunate mistake? Or clear proof that technology sometimes fails spectacularly when faced with reality? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to hit like. And remember to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey into the machines that shook history.